It's now official. Maura Healey is the governor of Massachusetts. In a history-making moment this morning, the former Attorney General took the oath of office and then delivered her inaugural address.
I assume this office as the first woman and first gay person ever elected governor of Massachusetts. In this state, we're all trailblazers. We're all leaders. That's why we live in Massachusetts. No matter the challenges we face ahead, we will stay true to the best of ourselves. We will act with empathy and equity, and we will work together.
But once all of the pomp and circumstance dies down, Healey will have to hit the ground running on a series of problems plaguing the state, from the ever-embattled MBTA and an affordable housing crisis to a fast-spreading new variant of COVID. So what can we expect to see from Governor Healey in the next few days, weeks, and months? I'm joined now by Erin O'Brien, an associate professor of political science at UMass Boston, and GBH News political editor Peter Kadzis. Welcome to you both. Erin, let's start with you. Does Maura Healey, she's a known commodity, does she get a honeymoon period as some incoming politicians do?
My theory on this is that most politicians get 100 days. If you're a person of color, if you're a woman, you get maybe 50 to 33 days. So yes, I think there's a honeymoon, but maybe not quite as long as some of the guys have enjoyed.
Okay, Peter, you have a similar recipe?
I'm not so sure how long the honeymoon will be. I think she'll have one. The reason I say that is getting the Massachusetts legislature to do anything, even in 100 days, is pretty tough.
Okay, well, she has what some people call the trifecta, right? The Senate, the House, the governor, all of the same party. What do you think that's going to mean?
It should mean going in smoother sailing than you might expect. Listen, the most promising bit of political intelligence I heard recently was that a few days before her inauguration, she was seen at the UMass Club having lunch with former Speaker Bob DeLeo. She was clearly being primed for how to deal with the legislature. See, the governor is at her best when there's a crisis. When it comes to making long-term policy, she needs the assent of the legislature, and they can be a prickly bunch. Her inaugural address, however, was terrific. She laid out some very clear and specific goals, especially towards housing. And if she could get the new the Secretaryship for Housing established in the first 100 days, I'd say she'd be off to a very good start.
Okay, well, you're a bit ahead of me, Peter, but since you mentioned it, let's hear what she had to say on housing in her inaugural address.
We'll use property that belongs to the people to help the people. I've already directed my Secretary of Administration and Finance to identify unused state-owned land that can be turned into rental housing or homes within 1 year. We'll get first-time home buyers the help that they need. Reduce the cost of
Okay, Erin, is she proposing something radical here? We've seen a little bit of this already from Mayor Wu.
Not at all radical. I mean, that's music to Massachusetts residents' ears, regardless of your partisanship and who you voted for. We have a housing crisis. She talked about an affordability crisis. She talked about a childcare crisis. Those are all indeed huge problems in Massachusetts. Her naming them and having specific ideas and specific centers in which her administration will deal with them is specific, and it is necessary.
Peter, you see anything she should be doing on housing, any particular powers she should be taking?
I would stand behind her move to have a special cabinet secretary named. That would cover a lot of ground rather than dissipating her energies and trying to do a little bit here and a little bit there. I actually think it's a quite novel idea.
She talked about people leaving Massachusetts in droves. She said they are exiting the state more than any other state in the union. Do you think housing is a big part of that?
Oh, sure. The cost of living is part of it. And housing is, you know, unless you're a gazillionaire, housing is your single largest cost. It's a very, very serious problem. We think of Massachusetts as being this golden state that attracts people from all over. People can't afford to stay here.
Erin, do you see other places she could shore up that exodus? Anything else she should be focused on?
I mean, she talked about childcare, and, you know, like Peter said, she talked about Massachusetts as the greatest nation, or the greatest state in the nation. She talked about this idea of Massachusetts exceptionalism, that we do it better here. We have the first public library. We were first in gay marriage, first in public school. Our Constitution is the model. And then she said, hey, if we're so special, we need to fix those things. And I thought that was a very a poetic use of Massachusetts exceptionalism to cajole us into better housing, cajole us into affordable childcare.
So if childcare is such a major factor, what power does she have? One of the big issues is salaries aren't high enough. What can she do about something like that?
Well, she talked about this Common Street bill that would essentially scale how much you're paying in childcare to your income. As I understand it, it would be no more than 7% of your income that you take home. So you're right, she's going to need partners in the private sector, wages, you know, the minimum wage just went up. So it's not, I think her naming it is in part the difference of a female governor. And she did have a specific underneath there with that Common Street bill. Is it everything? No, but it's day one in a speech. I think a lot of us will give her a little time to fix that one.
Well, another place she has really put herself out in front is on climate. She says she will be the most climate active governor in the country. Here's what she had to say in her inaugural on climate.
Tomorrow, I'm issuing my first executive order. It will create the country's first cabinet-level climate chief, reporting directly to me. For the first time ever in our state's history, I'll propose we commit at least 1% of the state budget to environmental and energy agencies. It's a state investment in the budget of the Clean Energy Center. Let's commit to making climate innovation the next big investment.
Peter, where do you think she has to put her energies on climate?
Well, it depends on how you define climate. Climate means energy. And what will her stance be on natural gas? There's a strong lobby in the state that wants all fossil fuels abolished. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they're scheduled to be picketing her inaugural gala tonight. I think safe ground, of course, is, you know, wind and solar, renewables. But again, it's how you define climate, and that intersects and or collides with fossil fuels. So that's a knotty problem.
Yeah, and you pick up on a point which she will have to deal with. It's a kind of issue that requires working with both public and private sector, bringing in business. But there will be a lot of pressure from more progressive organizations. Do you think that this will be a moment, now that she has sort of moved on from being under Baker's shadow, that she will be pushed further to the left by things like climate and other causes, Erin?
I think she wants to go to the left on climate. That's in keeping with who she is. You know, I'm near the Weymouth compressor station. She could come in there and try to work to shut that down, be proactive in that way. And young voters want her to deliver on the environment. But in other realms, I don't think she'll be pushed to the left because she beat Sonia Chang Diaz, a more progressive, talented politician. She beat her handily. So, you know, it's sort of once you win big in the primary, and you win big in the primary election without the full backing of total progressives, then Maura Healey has shown she doesn't need them, but she wants them on things like the environment. And I think to work together well on that issue, but maybe not so good on some others.
Peter, how do you think she will be different from Baker? How do you see her distinguishing herself? During the campaign, a lot was made of the fact that she was somewhat, as our colleague Adam Riley said, somewhat Baker-esque. How do you think she's going to distinguish herself now?
Well, by Baker-esque, I can't speak for Adam, but I can interpret him. I think what Adam was saying is that she maintains a calm demeanor, that she's not in television terms, a hot personality. And that came through in her inaugural. She was very persuasive, at times being very personal, preacher-teacher. That's the similarity with Baker. She's more forthcoming when she's forthcoming, which isn't always. She's more forthcoming with Baker, but she naturally tilts she does tilt left. It remains to be seen how left she is. Baker tilts right. Baker was a great compromiser, and in a way, Baker had an advantage being a Republican with the legislature because his approval ratings were so high, the legislature would have to think twice before they took him on. And they took him on a lot of times, but they did it quietly and subtly and allowed him to save face. The whole key to her governorship is going to be her relationship with the legislature, especially the House of Representatives.
And her relationships in Washington, how will that be different from Baker?
I'm not sure it'll be that different. I mean, the whole congregation a delegation rather, in Washington.
Yeah, we also have Pope funeral on the brain, I think.
Is dedicated to trying to bring home the bacon from Massachusetts. They haven't been doing a very good job lately, though. I mean, as the funding about rebuilding the Cape Cod bridges is now in deep, deep question.
Erin, are you in agreement on that? She won't have much more luck in Washington?
Well, yeah, I mean, she has willing partners in the Massachusetts delegation. You know, Baker and Marty Walsh had a good relationship, but, you know, Massachusetts punches above its weight in DC, and I think they'll continue to. Listen, the Massachusetts delegation has every reason in the world to work well with her. Indeed, she's a fellow Democrat, so I think they'll take her into the fold quite quickly.
And we can't
share interest.
Right. We can't leave the issue of the T and transit on the table. Where do you think she will be different from Baker?
Well, it's going to depend on the team she puts in place to administer the T. Listen, she and Baker would say the same things on the surface. It's the people you appoint. It's the people you appoint, and can she get the legislature to make a bigger investment in the T, which is what's needed. But the short term will depend on who her, Mr. or Ms. T turns out to be.
Right. Erin, do you think she will have better luck with the legislature when it comes to consistent funding for the T?
Yeah, in the sense that, listen, everybody wants to fix the T. It's an albatross. But, it always mystified me a little bit that Charlie Baker, as the technocrat governor, never paid for the T. All of us agree the T is pretty abysmal. He agreed the T is pretty abysmal, but he never paid in terms of popular support. I'll be interested to see if she doesn't show immediate returns on the T. Do her numbers start to chip away? Because now Massachusetts expects, if you have an entirely Democratic leadership team and the state House and state Senate, then, a lot of novices say it should be easier to get work done. But I actually think Baker enjoyed being the foil of the legislature, and the legislature enjoyed it back because they each had someone to blame when things didn't get done.
Peter?
Look, I'll be able to report back on this in a couple of months. I take the orange line. We'll see if my trips speed up at all.
All right. Well, we almost have to wrap, but I got to ask you about COVID. She's coming in just as a COVID rise is currently happening. That could not only kill a honeymoon, but kill a lot of plans. Any thoughts?
COVID is under control in this state. There may be a spike in, people shaking their hands, but it's under control. It's a public health issue. I don't see any big challenge there, as long as she's upfront and out front about it.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Erin O'Brien, thank you very much. And Peter Kadzis, thank you.
Take care.